Our son Ryan was diagnosed with an ultra-rare condition in 1991 called Mucopolysaccharidosis Type I. We were told to take our son home, and there was nothing we could do. And we'd find each other laying on the floor next to Ryan's bed, waiting for nothing to change. And the reality was, at the time when I asked, please tell me where are the scientists that are working on this disorder? And he said, there are very few because it's so rare. I understand the power of data. I did not, but now I see what data can do. The power of what you do in leading the data field cannot be understated.
So Mark, could you tell us more about your story? Welcome to the SCDM podcast series on partnership in clinical trials. Thanks for the audience to join the SCDM podcast on partnership and collaboration. Today is a special podcast to me. I have the immense pleasure to receive Mark Dant from the Ryan's Foundation. So Mark, could you tell me or tell us more about your story on how you created and why you created the Ryan's Foundation?
Thank you, Patrick. It is an honor for me to be here as well. I understand the power of data. I did not a long time ago, and now I see what data can do. Our son Ryan, our only child, my wife and I, was diagnosed with an ultra-rare condition in 1991 called Mucopolysaccharidosis Type I. We were told at the day of diagnosis that Ryan would live maybe 10 or 12 years. He would suffer, he would lose his ability to walk, his ability to play baseball and basketball, which he loved immensely. Yeah. He would suffer and pass away. And the reality was, at the time when I asked the physician, the diagnosing physician, multiple times, I was grilling him, please tell me where are the scientists that are working on this disorder? And he said, there are very few because it's so rare. And where are the companies? Because companies make drugs that can treat. He said, there are none because Ryan has an ultra-rare condition and there is no business model that would be built. And the long story short was, we were told to take our son home and there was nothing we could do. Yeah. And Patrick, that's what we did for a year. For a year, every night, my wife and I would put Ryan to bed. We would wander around our small home. And later in the evening, we'd find each other laying on the floor next to Ryan's bed, listening to him breathe, spending the night there, night after night after night, waiting for nothing to change, and nothing did change. After a year, I would spend the time, most of my off time, in the public library learning about Ryan's disease, trying to understand the lines of science, the language of science. And what I found was Dr. Lou Weber in Dallas, where we lived, was correct. But I also stumbled across a book on how to start a nonprofit. I read the book, and we did something very, very small. We had a bake sale. Yeah. Our friends brought in cookies and cupcakes, and we sold them, and we made $342. But for some reason, that moment changed everything for us because we believed by doing something, something could change. I went to conference after conference, went to Dusseldorf one year and met a scientist who was working on a similar treatment. And that girl, a young girl, had a disease called Gaucher, and she was treated by something called enzyme replacement therapy. Yeah. And I asked him, was it possible for this type of therapy to work for MPS I? And the scientist was phenomenally nice, but he also told me a few things that I needed to remember. One, he said it was possible. But he asked how old Ryan was, and at the time he was 4.5. Yeah. He said, well, you don't have enough money because it will take a lot of money, and you don't have enough time because Ryan was 4.5. But he did say it was possible. We kept looking, and we found a researcher at a small World War II era bungalow behind the county hospital in Torrance, California, working on this process, but he had no funds. His name was Emil Kakis. To this date, he's the most dedicated and thorough scientist with regard to science and patients and data. Yeah. That he developed a therapy. Ryan started the trial in February of 1998. And every week since that time, he's had a 4-hour IV that puts back in his system what he can't make. Yeah. He is now the longest treated person in the world. He graduated high school, which we knew he would not do. He graduated college. He got married. They bought a home last year. He's living the life that we had placed away a long time ago because we knew that Ryan was going to die. But something changed. Effort, science, data. Yep. And now Ryan is living the life we'd always dreamed of. The drug is now treating children and adults in 75 countries worldwide because of the partnership of hope that brought Ryan back to us and changed the world.
Big story. It's a phenomenal story. And maybe for the audience, from treating Ryan to treating the world. I'm sure there has been a journey, and I'm pretty sure your leadership was instrumental. How did you gain momentum to bring that therapy to treating kids all across the world?
So it's very, very easy for all of us to think of our own life and think it's impossible to change a life in Australia when we live in a small home in Dallas, Texas. We didn't do that. The science did that, and the partnership of the scientist who was driven. And a company formed, a biotech company called BioMarin, with just one drug. And the drug they thought would work would be the right drug that would treat Ryan's. The scientists pushed forward, the capital investment came in, but then the capital investment dried up, and there was another obstacle. What do we do now? Because these children in the trial, 10 children, were improving. Dramatically, they were improving. So they found another partnership with a company called Genzyme. That partnership, Genzyme BioMarin, brought the drug across the threshold to treat in the U.S., but the U.S. is not done. So those leaders in those companies then went to EMA, Canada, around the world, and brought the drug by showing, frankly, the data from the first trial and the data from the second trial that said this drug does improve life. It saves time, and that's what it did for Ryan.
Yeah. What did you learn about the complexities of moving a therapy that you know works to patients? It might have taken years and years to get there, right?
Yes. I knew nothing of science. I knew nothing of the FDA approval and regulation process, but there would be people that do. And biotech companies, industry partners is what we in the patient space call them. Because frankly, without the industry partner, finding a drug to bring across the threshold is really mostly impossible. It can be done, but it's very, very rare. What we found that there would be obstacles that Dr. Emil Kakas and the team of people he would find would understand that obstacles would be there, that it would not be an easy drive. But in the end, it would be worth it because these children whose parents are laying on the floor next to their bed waiting for them to die would have a hand up and say, your life is not over. We will defeat the obstacle. And they did. There were countless of the first trial ended in the first year. All the data was so sound, it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And yet it didn't make it through the trial process. So a second trial came with 44 more patients in Europe, Canada, the US. Total of 5 years was delayed. But another obstacle brought another opportunity to defeat the obstacle and bring the drug across the threshold. Because of that, I received emails and other outreach from patients and parents around the world. There was a family in Canada just 2 weeks ago that reached out to me and said that their little girl was just diagnosed with MPS I. But the doctor said there is a treatment. My wife and I began to cry. Because we remember what it was like when the doctor said there's nothing you can do. But now there's a comma, there is a treatment. And she sent me a picture of the little girl, and she's so sweet. Every week she does what Ryan does. Now that family looks to Ryan as hope because with an obstacle, there's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
If you have the drive to work for it.
You're an example of resiliency. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And if we get now closer to the patients themselves and their place in drug development, what has been your experience, or what might be your expectations to make sure we place patients where they need to be at the center of clinical research, Mark?
I think that's a wonderful question, Patrick, because in all careers we can focus specifically on our own desk, on our own screen, and we can see if we move this to here, then I have accomplished the task for the day, and I have succeeded. In a way, there is success there. But in reality, what those in science data, in your career, well, in my mind, you were there, your goal may be to work with the data, to make the data appear as it really is. Some good news, some bad news.
Yeah,
That's the goal. But the mission is to treat.
absolutely.
If you look up from the screen and you see a parent, two parents are laying on the floor next to their son's or daughter's bed,
Yeah.
waiting for nothing to change. Those parents are there. They're waiting for your help.
Yeah.
Focus on the mission. Your mission is to treat, and that's what you do with the data. The first time I saw the immense amount of data that had been compiled over Ryan. Ryan was 8 weeks before his 10th birthday. We were told he would pass away by the time he was 10 to 15. The trial was 1 year. There was additional data for 4 years. The volumes of data that were presented at the FDA hearing was just phenomenal. Yeah. Someone did that. Ryan went through all the tests. The physicians administered the test and with their staff, but someone went through that data and made it readable and usable.
Yeah.
And that solved the puzzle to see, does this drug work or does it not?
Yeah.
And he's 36 years old.
36.
Yes.
So I think it's an amazing story. And to your point, people don't think beyond the data itself.
Yes.
They tend at times to forget the real mission. The mission, as you said, is not to collect data. It's really to bring cure to patients in need.
Yes.
And I think it's important for our community as a take-home message, not to forget the patient behind the data.
I absolutely agree, Patrick. I think that's a phrase that may be not used as often as it should be, is even if the drug works, but the data does not define it specifically as it does work, the drug will fail.
Absolutely,
The patients who had opportunity, who will reach for the only hope they have is in treatment, the drug will fail. The power of what you do in leading the data field cannot be understated. Without that, those volumes of data pressed into files that can be readable and usable, these drugs will not be approved, and the hope does not remain. You provide hope with data, and that is a realistic view from the patients, from the bedside.
Yeah. Maybe before we conclude, maybe a few more questions. I'm sure you learned a ton through your journey, maybe successes and failures, but sometimes we learn more from failure than successes. Do you want to share your thought or maybe example of failures and how you bounce back?
Sure. In fundraising, these were the days before the internet.
Oh, yeah.
And even since then. But the good news is, because of the internet and the power of connectivity, there are moms and dads like Jean and I were, who are standing up and forming their own nonprofit to reach forward and push the data and the science into a positive place. There were so many fundraisers that we would spend hours and hours and hours and hours and bring back a few $100s. And we both had full-time jobs. So the Ryan Foundation is still an all-volunteer organization. None of us have ever been paid. It's a very small group of 5 or 6 families who do what we're asking the scientists, the data people that you work with to do. We're focusing on the patient. There have been failures after failures where even in the first drug trial, when we saw all 10 patients improve, we the parents and the children, and Dr. Kakis and his team saw those patients improve. And yet when they went to the FDA, a quick side story, BioMarin took all of that data from those 10 patients in the first year, put it together with their team of scientists and data team, brought it to the FDA originally, and they said, this data looks really strong, but you should go ahead and move it forward. And so they got it ready to go forward, and when they did, the leader of the first group in the FDA had brain cancer, and sadly passed away. He was the one who said, bring the data forward because it looks very, very good. The drug was then moved to another group who then looked at the data and said, you did not have a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. You only had 10 patients. We cannot approve a drug on 10 patients on double-blind placebo control. Without that, the previous leader had said, yes, you can. And now what do? You have no capital because it's spent on the first trial. You have no market. You have nothing in the market because you're a single drug company. And you're broke, but the drug works. So what do? So they found another partner in Genzyme who infused enough cash to start another trial, like I mentioned earlier, in the US, 2 sites, site in Germany and the UK, and in Canada, and 4 more years.
Yeah.
And then it was same data went forward with 44 more patients, and the drug was eventually approved. Could you imagine the horror in the mind of Dr. Kakis and the patients who knew the drug was working, but it would go away unless a partner was found? That was an obstacle they had to decline. But it pushed them forward. It gave them an opportunity to succeed, and they had to drive to focus on the patient.
Yeah. But to be honest, I cannot imagine the thought that would go through your mind just thinking about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's mind-blowing. So no, thank you so much. And maybe my last question is, obviously, on positively our world evolved. I know in the industry, particularly in my own company, there is more focus on rare and ultra-rare diseases. Have you observed yourself an improvement on focus on patients with rare or even ultra-rare diseases?
Absolutely, absolutely, without question, there's been such a huge change on rare and ultra-rare. The business model was built basically on Ryan's drug, that success can be made when the patient is treated, and a return on investment can happen. Today, for instance, all these years later, there are 18 different companies vying for a second-generation treatment in MPS I. The platform that was launched through Ryan's drug in rare now treats other diseases: Hunter syndrome, Meritola-May, Pompe syndrome, Fabry syndrome, MPS VII slide syndrome, Morquio syndrome. The list goes on and on. So the reality is that a win in one rare and ultra-rare condition can launch drugs and treatments in multiple other conditions. That's the value of great science and great data. It pushes the science forward, not just on one condition, but on multiple.
Absolutely.
There is hope for so many families like ours who are waiting for nothing to change. Something changes with effort.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. So before we close, do you want to say the last thing to our audience?
The story is so remarkable for our son and our family because it's a story of never quitting. Dr. Emil Kakis has written a book, aptly so. It's not the book on the Ryan Foundation and starting with a bake sale. It's a book about the science. It's a book about the data and all the obstacles that we spoke of, and there's so many more in there. He pinned it himself, and he called it "Saving Ryan." It's a great book. It can be found on Amazon. I've read it a couple times. It's out on audio as well. It's so moving to understand that so many hands were in to help reach down and give the 3 of us a lift up, and it worked.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for participating in our podcast. I think it has been an honor and privilege for you to be here with us. And throughout the conference as well this year, I think your message was strongly received.
Wonderful.
Overdue. But it's never too late. So I'm sincerely appreciating what you're doing for Ryan, for those patients in the world, and to help us move the needle at this SCDM society.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.